Ladies and gents, boys and girls, pronouns of your choosing, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. My guests on the podcast today are a team of South Wales firefighters, Bridgend Extrication Team. These guys are specialists in the art of extrication. They are 6 times world champions, 3 times UK champions, and today we're going to learn some of the secrets that have made them the elite team that they are. Now, firstly, it's a really important shout out to our partner, William Wood Watches. Johnny's support, Johnny's informal coaching, sharing the wins, sharing his own journey, sharing the journey of his grandfather, and the journey of the brand, William Wood Watches. Now, coming on board with the Firefighters Podcast is not something they had to do. William Wood Watches is featured in GQ magazine, The Times, Esquire, Forbes, and now they've made it to the dizzying heights of the Firefighters Podcast. Let's get some realism. The reason it's so important to me, and I know it's so important to the brand, that they are aligned with the podcast is because it's about authenticity. So look, I would suggest go over to their Instagram, go over to their website for your own benefit. But if not for that, do it as a favor to me, do it as a favor to the podcast. We wouldn't be gaining the momentum that we are without the commitment and support of this incredible brand. I was already an admirer and a fan of William Wood Watches long before the existence of the podcast. The company was founded in 2016 with the vision to create beautifully crafted British luxury watches from upcycled firefighting equipment. And they've got so many incredible designs, from the Valiant collection to the Bronze Sapphire to the Triumph to the Chivalrous. The upcycled materials used to make these are even sourced from the UK. The detail that goes into making these watches is so incredible. Even so far as like the London Fire Brigade helmet is actually melted down into the crown of the watch. It's named after the owner's grandfather. William Wood did 25 years in the British Fire Service. But for me, above all of that, and the thing that gets the most mentions of my watch, is the strap. It's fire hose strap. I know it's something they're so proud of. The straps are cast off Angus Duraline British fire hose rubber. You see them in the red, the yellow, I think there's the blue there now. There's just so much thought's gone into this. They are the longest serving partner of the podcast, and they hold a very special place in my heart, not only because I love the watch, not only because it gets a lot of mentions, but because I've seen this company evolve, and I know Johnny and the team are going to go all the way. So whether it's a retirement gift, whether it's a birthday gift, whether it's a gift to yourself, congratulations on a challenge, on a project, on a promotion, get over to williamwoodwatches.com and check out some of their incredible timepieces. So if you're ready, let's jump in there with the team from Bridgend Extrication. If you're looking for the specialists in extrication, there's so many takeaways from today's episode. So if you're putting together some training for some RTC, if you want to learn a little bit more about the hazards, the trials, the tribulations that are faced when extricating casualties from HGVs, from tanks, from vehicles, from all kinds of stuff, then after you've listened to this episode, be sure to head over to Bridgend Extrication Team on Instagram. They have got so many amazing training ideas, so many small tips, tricks, different ways to look at how to safely extricate somebody from some of these hazardous environments. So without further ado, buckle up for safety, and I will see you crazy cats on the other side. Hey up, fellas, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Can you hear us okay, Pete?
I can hear you all right now, yeah. The biggest thing is the audio, so it's the most important factor that whoever's talking, make sure you just project your voice. That's all.
Okay, great. We've kind of tried to divvy out what we're going to be saying, so we'll probably jump around the group a little bit. And
that's perfect.
Okay, great.
Awesome. So who have we got in the room?
So obviously got myself in the middle, Les Evans, Magan, Rob Buckley, Shaun Moody.
How we doing, brothers? All right?
Yeah, all good. Let's see how it rolls.
Fellas, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How we doing?
All good. All good. Thank you.
Awesome. So today was a sort of really, really special episode because when I'm looking at the emergency services and the fire service specifically, we always try and break down each sort of sector of it and try and hunt out some specialists. We had a rope rescue team on the other week. We've had some BA instructors and stuff like that. But something that we're seeing an enormous sort of rise in the last decade or so is road traffic collisions. So today, joined by a Bridgend Extrication Team, you guys have got a really colourful trophy cabinet between sort of going all over the world now, competing in these sort of rescue extrication demonstrations and competitions. So I wanted to get you on as a sort of specialist, and bow down, if you will, in expertise to sort of get a real understanding for what it's all about, break down sort of some of the steps that an operational firefighter goes through attending these sorts of incidents. So take us back, Les. How did the team first get together, and what is it about RTC rescues specifically for you guys that you decided to go into it?
So the team actually started in around 1998. Shaun, to my right, is the original team member of the team, so I'll probably let Shaun talk to this. He can give you a better insight to the back catalogue, and then maybe I can jump in and finish off at the front.
Roger that.
Yeah, Peter, basically, it all started on Red Watch Bridgend in about 1998. A group of us on the watch there. We were aware there was the rescue challenge started. Bridgend is a very, road traffic collision. There's a high call profile there. So we decided to learn some new skills and we wanted to go through the challenges. So basically, it started from a watch. Myself was the crew manager at the time there, the old LF in those days, and another colleague who's retired now, is Ian Greenman. So we put it to the watch, and they took that on the mantle. It took us actually around 3 to 4 years to develop that, where we, training on duty and particularly off duty and going to different parts around the country, learning off other people who were ahead of us. And brought it together. So the ethos of the team was all about learning. And then when we got back to the station, and we pushed it out across all the watches and other departments, whoever was interested in it. That's what the team was all about, and that ethos is still there. I think over the history since 1998, there's been 28 people that come through the team. So it's not, there isn't the team and people, because it is a huge commitment. But everybody has gone off and taken those skills and knowledge with them, and pushed it into whatever department they go into, or even other services.
I think the fact that you've kept it going for that long, 20 plus years, really stands the test of time, because you see stuff in services where one individual will have a massive sort of interest, a big passion in something, but it tends to be built around them. They're like an individual, somebody that sets that sort of subject matter on fire. They really, really communicate it very well. But the fact that you've kept it going for 20 years is pretty incredible. I love what you said about sort of personal development and learning within the sector. Now, what is it about the extrication challenge that really drew you to it? Because for some people, they'll have never heard of this. What actually is the challenge? It's
a strange one, really. Like I said, it is about the learning and taking those new skills and putting them on the road and everything else. But a lot of it is the camaraderie between the teams. A lot of the people in the team is, ex-rugby players and different sportsmen and just player, and just that camaraderie, bringing the people together and focusing the mind and being part of something. That's also been a major factor. And I'll say it is we've been going a long time, but the dynamics of the team and the ethos of the team and the can-do attitude where everybody comes in the team has always been the same. And we always have a good crack. We don't take ourselves too seriously, never had, and we're just there for helping people. And like I said, people retire, people go into, I've got other life commitments, we just keep it rolling on.
Yeah.
And, we've enjoyed ourselves all along the way too. So it's not just about working hard, we have definitely enjoyed ourselves as a team.
Have you found it difficult kind of getting the whole watches involved at times? Because some, stations, some services, certainly some watches will hear this across the UK and sort of 60 plus countries, whatever, that listen to it. Sometimes it's hard to get anybody out just to do training in general. Some people don't want to get out there on the drill ground. They don't want to get involved. And when you start adding in that competitive aspect, have you ever had sort of any pushback from people that don't want to rush, they don't want to hurry? Because, we're emergency service, so we've got to do it quickly, we've got to do it efficiently. But when you start bringing in that competitive aspect, it can be difficult for some people to want to engage with it. Have you ever found it difficult sort of getting the wider group of people involved?
I like to hand that back over to Roger if I can.
Absolutely. You've got to hand the baton, brother, otherwise they're going to make you do all the talking.
No, I'll answer that one. It is on, sometimes we do experience a little bit of pushback from watchers and individuals over the years, but I think as the team has progressed and sort of developed along the way, so as the awareness of RTC and road traffic collision rescue within our service, and being in the largest service in South Wales, obviously we've got the M4 corridor running through our service area. We've also got one of our biggest core profiles is RTC. So I think the majority of personnel within the service have got a good awareness of the skill level that's required to carry out a good casualty-centred rescue along with our blue light partners. And what they've seen us as a team do and the skills and techniques that we've learned from our exposure within the competitions, we brought back to the service and sort of developed best practice within our own service. So people have sort of got on board with that, but you'll always get those one or two who don't want to play, but we try and cajole them all along the way and for the better reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were seeing changes in industries with things like breathing apparatus, construction of buildings and all that sort of stuff. But you're right in saying road traffic collisions, above all sectors, I think, in my personal sort of view, that they've gone through some of the biggest changes. I mean, Rod, you say you've got some big main sort of M4 corridors and stuff that run through your patch. What do you think? I mean, the competitions and stuff have been going for like 20 years now. And through that period of time, we've seen some massive changes in vehicle technology. What do you think have been some of the biggest changes you've seen that have required the emergency services to adapt their approach?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, vehicle technology, stronger materials being used in the vehicle builds, but also with HGV, heavy rescue lorries, a lot of lorries are used in the motorways. So certainly services and fire and rescue services along the country are having to develop their rescue techniques to deal with these kinds of vehicles that are moving through their patches. And, we've sort of taken what we've learned from the extrication world and the competitions that we've been to. We've been lucky enough to have been exposed by, other individuals who are deemed as leads within their fields. And we've sort of taken the knowledge and skills that we've been shown by these individuals and developed it along the way. Technology in tool rescue is developing. Obviously, manufacturers are developing better tools to deal with the new strength that's being put in vehicles. Obviously, hydraulic tool manufacturers are always trying to catch up and make their tools stronger and faster. But also, we as a service, we promote the use of, small tools like socket sets and impact wrenches and those kinds of things. We look to try and do the simple things first before we go for the more complicated tasks. So we're always looking to develop along those lines in the methods of rescue that we'll use to get people out of vehicles.
I think when you say about sort of simplicity, I love that you brought that point up, because when some people see some of these drills and some of these big high international competitions, they can sometimes use the excuse of complexity to avoid the sort of desire for personal development, because they look at some of this and they go, yeah, bloody hell, when's the chance we're going to go to something like that? And I wanted to ask you about equipment, because it must be difficult to get that universal sort of agreement about the sort of equipment that's used in these competitions. So what equipment are you actually allowed to use? Because like you said, the emergency services sector has got thousands of different distributors, businesses, companies that are always innovating and bringing out new equipment, but somebody needs to draw a line and agree what is the standard equipment that you're allowed to use at these competitions?
I can answer this, like Pete.
Roger that.
Obviously, within the rescue challenges, whether it's the UK or the World Rescue Organisation, there's always a limited amount of equipment that's going to be offered up to every single team, and that creates standardization. That the teams can basically have the same equipment, same input, same opportunity as a team from a neighbouring service or a different country.
Okay.
So for us, we follow that standardization list, which generally is things like ratchet, stability equipment, whether it's Stab Fast or Lucas or whatever manufacturer brings that equipment to the challenge, right across then to reciprocating saws, down to then hydraulic equipment. And the hydraulic equipment is then offered by all manufacturers, and every team has the opportunity to select the equipment that they feel.
So the manufacturers actually come to the competitions and they offer you the choice of the kit, and it's basically like turning up at like an armory and you get to pick your own stuff. You don't have to bring your own equipment with you. Yeah,
so basically the manufacturers, obviously we get an opportunity to have workshops using that equipment, so everyone gets a standardization of that particular piece of equipment, and then the opportunity is there then to use any particular line of tool, any equipment that they feel maybe whether that's even in their own service or not, that's going to benefit them or give them exposure to new equipment. So what you'll have one set of hydraulics with one ram, one dedicated cutter, one spreader. Whatever manufacturer you want to use, they're usually there supporting the event, but you'll only be able to take that set of one hydraulics. And same with recip saws, same with impact drivers or whatever else you got there. So it is a suite. So basically, what you'll find is an appliance there. In equipment, sometimes they do go off appliances with set parts of equipment. But when you go to different parts of the world, they lean in different areas. I know in America and a lot of Australia, they still use Ajax air guns, pneumatic equipment quite effectively. In UK and Europe, we're slightly different. So it's getting that awareness of the equipment and how best to use it in the best location. So it is it is like a Swiss Army knife. It depends what you pull out is what you use with your knowledge and skills.
You want to make sure you're pulling out from the wrong point as well. Do you always do the locker shuffle before you start your jobs? Because I imagine, so this sort of stuff is time critical. And when you get in there and setting out your appliance that you've been given for the day, nobody wants to be that guy or girl that heads to the wrong locker and has to open up 7 of them before you find the right piece of kit that you want to use.
I think the equipment side is a big influence on us as a service. Something, obviously, we've had exposure of equipment, like Shaun was just saying, where other countries around the world are using kit that is so simple, hardly any mechanical parts, like the high lift jacks, for example, where we have tried to utilise them then in our own service. So we bring that awareness back to our own service so that we can actually use that kit operationally. And that, to me, that's where it really ties into what we do as a team. It's not just about going away, having this exposure, learning, having different input on different equipment. It's about how does that benefit us in South Wales as well.
And I think over the years, it's typical fire and rescue service. Sometimes we try to, we want to use all the equipment because we see it's too cheap a kit and that. Yeah. And keep, lucky enough to go to different parts of the world. They, like Les said, they use equipment, simplest equipment to great effect. Sometimes in the far more developed emergency service countries, we see the big shiny stuff and we default to that. When, no disrespect, a simple piece of equipment is really effective, quicker and easier to get to work. So it's that blended approach basically. Go, like Les said, I think, and Roger said earlier, go simple early, don't overcomplicate things. And then if you need bigger and better, you pull that out of the bag if you've got it.
Do you see that, the sort of desire for the industry to consistently innovate and be a bit more creative about stuff that they're doing? They do bring a lot more complexity into it. Sometimes we justify it with a safety reason, sometimes we justify it with an efficiency reason, but the more complexity you bring in, I suppose the more opportunity for human error there is.
Yeah, I think, like Shaun just said, as a team, the ethos we use as a load of Welshmen is keep us simple. And that we'll always look to try and do the simple things first, whether that's being able to reach in and utilise the vehicle systems to make space in and around the casualty, then progress to a small hand tool or a ratchet or an impact wrench, then progressive to the bigger, better tools, hydraulics or recip saws to create space. That's sort of the ethos we work off. But yeah, manufacturers will, always be looking at research and development to make a tool bigger, better, faster. And sometimes for the benefits that brings, it has a tendency to over-engineer the problem.
Definitely agree. Now, you were talking there about utilising some of the simple fundamentals when sort of approaching these, and I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of go back, because we have a massive variety of different members of the services that listen, from recruits to really experienced firefighters to police to ambulance, people that have perhaps limited exposure to some of the systems and some of the ways of working that we do. So I wanted to take it back and sort of talk through each stage and see what the best efficiencies are, see how you guys and girls have seen the stages evolve and the fastest way to do so of them. So when you arrive in on scene, what sort of factors are you initially considering, and how does the assessment of that team approach happen?
Obviously, as a team and a service, we will follow closely the standard 6 phases of a rescue, road traffic rescue. But obviously, the biggest thing that we obviously are aware of and we teach and we try to promote is communication. Communication between individuals is absolutely paramount. Knowing where, from the first phase of a risk assessment, is communicating all those risks and hazards to the crew and any other agencies that may be in attendance, establishing what they are, where they are, what safe systems of work are going to be used to deal with those hazards, and just knowing where every member of your crew is and what actions they're taking, even down to the simple things of putting a stability block in. We will operate as a crew, communicating to each other. I'm going driver's side, you're going passenger side. That's done. We know exactly where each other is at any one point in time. So from that perspective, as a team, like I said, we try to bring that sort of element back into our service, and that's what we try to teach to our crews, our recruits that are out there. And people may argue, oh yeah, that's competition stuff. But once they start doing it, you see how efficient they get at it, and they see how more swift they are at doing those actions when they're actually attending incidents. The sort of penny starts to drop with them, and they think, oh yeah, it is good to talk at the end of the day. So communication is one of the biggest things that we promoted from our perspective.
And that's throughout the rescue, whether it's, in for real or in our rescue challenge scenario. Verbalization of risks and where casualties are and what equipment is being used at that time. We always train in broad daylight a lot on a flat firefighter's yard. But when we're on it for real, it's down an embankment in dark areas. So let's communicate those trip hazards. Let's communicate what equipment's used, and particularly where the casualty is and his injury, he or she's injuries, and how you can adapt. So yeah, that myself is the best way. And it's not just at an initial phase; it's right throughout the communications there in the rescue sort of environment.
How quickly do you strike the balance between encouraging that little bit of self-deployment, that little bit of using your initiative, knowing what the fundamentals are going to be, and yes, encouraging each other to communicate and get to work, but ultimately the team leader and or incident commander does need that small window? How do you work that? I mean, you say communication is essential, but do you still have the point where, the incident commander is still going to do their initial 360 and making their assessment? How quickly will the rest of the team get to work? Or is that a sort of communication piece before the drill is even commenced, before you've even on approach to the incident? How do you strike that balance? Because I know as an incident commander myself, you can have those frustrations when you're with a cover crew sometimes where a lot of people will self-deploy with the best of intentions, but maybe you had a slightly different plan. Maybe you've observed something else, somebody thrown from a vehicle, a casualty they haven't seen underneath another vehicle. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, from a team perspective, I mean, obviously we're training all the time and we're developing that trust between ourselves as individuals, but obviously for operational crews, we're trying to develop that trust and that awareness of the need for that risk assessment phase to be carried out by an incident commander. But on the actual road, on an incident, we all know that incident commanders may get drawn into, bystanders or paramedics or doctors who are obviously dealing with the incident. So we try to delegate that risk assessment task to it doesn't have to be a junior officer. It could be a very knowledgeable firefighter. Yeah. But again, communication, we delegate that task and they'll go and do that risk assessment and communicate it to the rest of the team or the crew. Whilst that is happening and until it's deemed safe to approach that hazard zone, then the rest of the crew will be carrying out the preparation task, getting the equipment set up, getting firefighter media out, that kind of stuff. But as Shaun has already said, every element that we're talking about is being communicated at a level which everybody can hear, whether that be on a competition ground or whether that be on an incident ground. Everybody will know where each other is and what exactly tasks they're doing, and we'll all acknowledge each other so we know what each and every one is doing.
Do you find it difficult to encourage recruits to be confident enough to do that when you're bringing new people into the team? I find, getting people to project their voice and show that little bit of assertiveness, show that little bit of presence can sometimes be difficult when people feel less confident. Is that something you actively try and sort of develop with people?
I'll pass this one over to Rob because he's probably one of the newest members of the team, so he'll be able to give you the best answer.
Yeah, definitely with that. It's very different on an operational incident because there's somebody's in a bad position, so you step forward to that role automatically. Certainly in the competition environment, being new to the team, it was all there's a lot of things going on, and you didn't want to let anyone down and things like that. So you're on edge quite a lot, really. That you're doing the right things in the right sequence on an operational task. Then that you just go into automatic pilot and those things just go hand in hand. I think my role in the team is a medic, so what we always got to remember is whether it's on the road or in a competition, the casualty is going to dictate the path of extrication, and what needs to be done as a team to get that casualty up. It's going to be the quickest and best for the casualty.
I love that you've brought up that aspect of the medic side of it as well there, Rob. So just sort of echoing back to when we said about arriving on the incident and touching base with other agencies, when you're doing these competitions, do they encourage that whole sort of Jessup style approach? Is there other agencies? Will there be a representative acting as a member of the ambulance service? And do you liaise on that point? Or do you, as the medic for the team, lead from the casualty-centred perspective? How is that assessed in the competitions?
Yeah, well, I'm not Les is the lead medic, but
Dodge that question because the medics are a team, so I'm not the lead medic, we're a team unit, so you have to backtrack it.
Okay.
Yeah, the casualties certainly in the UK RO sector, they're paramedics, so they up to date with what injuries they're presenting with and what their signs and symptoms are being, and they know that if we're providing a bit of care, whether it's lip service or whether or not we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing, checking right areas and doing things methodically. The one competition I entered on the continent, because of the sheer amount of people competing, they were firefighters, so they still got a very big awareness of what we're supposed to be doing, but we're being assessed by medical professionals. From the GS point, we don't actually have a paramedic who we can liaise on. It's entirely up to us to go up, make the initial casualty contact, see what we say to Roger, get that back as soon as we can, whether the casualty's trapped, bleeding, whether he's unresponsive, and we need to get into the car as soon as possible and get oxygen and get treatment over to that casualty.
So, Rog, when we're looking at that initial access as being made, take us back to those steps of an RTC again. For imagining we're talking to a new recruit, when we're going into that stabilization, initial access, how does that take form? What are the recognised methods, and what have you guys seen to be the best and most effective ways of doing it?
From a competition perspective, I mean, obviously the incident commander and whoever's the medic will be doing a 360-degree risk assessment. And again, that's very much what we'll teach our crews to do operationally as well. And as we previously discussed, that might be delegated to another member of the crew. But while we're doing our risk assessment, we're obviously identifying where the casualty is and what position they're in. But we're also looking for those easy points of access, i.e. a broken window or door that may be ajar, that kind of thing. So if I'm identifying those openings for my medic, I will point them out to whether it's Rob or Les as we go around, say possible point of entry. So they've got an idea of where I'm expecting them to go. And likewise, whoever's the technical team on the crew will identify that that's where the first point of stability may be going in to get underneath the medic before they climb in through an open window, shall we say. But we'll always try to, if anything like that is on offer and it's locked down, we will always look to create initial space by doing the simple things first, which will be maybe breaking a piece of glass, getting the medic in, and then before they actually take hold of a casualty and actually start working on the casualty, they will look to try and open the doors from the inside out, do the simple things first. With regards to stabilisation, again, we're just trying to keep things simple. We will pack all the voids. We're obviously very aware that if there's a particularly complex stabilisation scenario or incident that we're going to, we try to promote the use of temporary stabilisation. So we may say, right, a stab bass might need to go into one position, but that's just purely to make it safe for the crew to get in and around the vehicle to the rest of the voids, and then that stab bass will be taken out then once the vehicle is in a fully stable position. And then obviously we'll just progress. Once you've got that initial access in, it might be an open window, an open door, we'll start to create internal space creation within the vehicle. And then obviously, as Rob has already alluded to, whatever the casualties is in our vehicle and what their injuries are dictating to us, will develop the plan, the extrication pathway.
And I think picking up on Rogers there is key to have that understanding of what the plan is, even when the stability is going in, because as you do effective stability, perhaps some circumstances for real and in the rescue scenarios we've done, you've created more entrapment by putting stabilisation possibly not in the best effective area. Yeah. So, the stab fast in right on a door opening or an access route straight out from where the vehicle we've seen it over many years, and then you've got to change things out, which ain't a problem. But if you can think ahead right through the whole rescue scenario, whether it's on the road or in the challenge, with your plan, and everybody communicates that plan, so stability goes in right, the glass management gets right, the space creation gets done, and the tool work is effective then to rescue the casualty. So it is, I've always said, it's like a game of snooker. You're not looking at that first shot. You're looking at those shots in advance, because that first shot could, set it up all wrong, working with paramedics or even the casualty carers in the vehicle.
So, something we also do, obviously myself and Rob are medical, so we will lead Roger sometimes down the route of manual stability, the simple things that will get us presenting signs and symptoms where they require that immediate access. And often that's down to Roger then as the team leader to sometimes hold the reins on us while they put in a simple ratchet, maybe just to secure a vehicle that's precarious, or if it's deemed that it is safer to approach in the area that we're working, Roger will call manual stability, and we'll go for them simple wins. And that to me is exactly the same as what we do operational. And the question you asked on about the trust within the crews, that's where I think any incident commander is always feeding off what the operational crews are seeing. I think that's invaluable when you're at incidents, but also in what we do. And it's about having that safety cell as a group amongst everybody, so that we're all feeding off each other's information and keep it as intended the whole time.
You said an interesting thing about sort of holding the reins back on people, because sometimes we can, we're eager to get in there and get hands on. You said a really crucial point that I just wanted to sort of double click on, whereby, you've made that initial access, your casualty care has got in or something like that. How often do you see that common mistake where they might go hands on straight away for C-spine immobilization or something like that, and they haven't looked around the vehicle, they haven't opened up some of the internal doors? How often do you see that? And is it a common thing where people are too quick to get hands-on to a casualty, and once they've committed, is that person kind of stuck then, that they're in there and they're committed to casualty care?
I'm probably the worst at this, Pete. Roger, I'm like a little spaniel trying to get...
Just scrambling through windows and getting in there.
No, I think you're spot on in what you're saying, and operationally, I think you see that quite frequently still in nowadays now, because I think over the years we've been driven down the line of C-spine management is paramount.
Yeah.
But obviously, as medical science and history has developed, obviously people are not dying much from C-spine injuries. Obviously, they're dying from internal and abdominal injuries and long bone injuries more so than C-spine. So obviously, if a casualty's got a compromised airway, then that dictates that we've got to get in and open that airway up. And the biggest thing to bear in mind with that, and certainly from the team perspective, is about the medic's positioning when they go into the vehicle. So if I identified an entry point for Les or Rob to get in the vehicle, they're looking to try and get into the seat alongside that casualty, if it's possible, or rather than getting into the back seat, because we know eventually the seat is going to have to be reclined to get the casualty out of the vehicle. Obviously, they're going to look to try and get them into a comfortable position, in a face-to-face position, where they can take control of the casualty, take control of the airway, and carry out their primary assessments. Obviously, if our casualty is responding to us and they are talking and they're just injured and they don't need airway management, then that's what we promote as a team, and operationally is that we don't get drawn in to take in control of the head and neck straight away. We'll work in and around the casualty to make some internal space in the vehicle, use the vehicle systems. If it's electric seats, we might say, let's keep the battery connected and recline the seats while the battery's connected. Then we'll make the call to disconnect the battery. So we're creating space around the casualty. Also, that's moving them from hazard to deformed vehicle as well. But it's allowing the guys as medics to get in and have space to work in and around in a comfortable environment.
Is it quite difficult to try and unpick some of those sort of nationally long setting approaches, like you've said about somebody getting in the back of the vehicle? As soon as they've got hands on, they can't see anything. They're pretty useless from a casualty management perspective then. And I love the point you make about if they've got an airway and they're breathing fine by themselves, what is the desire to get in there and place your hands on them to the point where you may compromise it? What's the value? But I've seen it trained certainly around the East Midlands for 20 years, where get straight in the back, place your hands on, isolate the battery as soon as you can. And like you say, with electric vehicles and stuff these days, it really limits your options. Then to try and reconnect it and potentially risk, airbags going off or something like that. Do you get much pushback nationally when you talk about these logical, common sense approaches, but a lot of people are still operating in the dark ages in some of these?
I think, over time, RDCs, have developed massively. And the fire services are disciplined organisations, and once we get told how to do it, sometimes it's very difficult for us to change our way. But we must take on, new ideas. And to be honest, it speaks for itself when, like face-to-face contact. And, we've had a sort of tagline in the service, never say never at RTC. Because once you say you'll never do this, you'll never do that. If you're in that circumstance, then where you've got to do it, you're tied that you won't do it, and then the casualty is not going to get rescued, and that. So even though we've got our set standard operating procedures, it's instilled in us never to say never. I'm picking up where we've talked about equipment, we've talked about vehicles a little bit. I think the casualty also is a great help for you. If you can get that casualty communication early, they became one of the biggest assets for you as a rescuer to get them out of the vehicle. Them helping themselves to a certain extent is a massive, and sometimes our communication, like you said, jumping in the back of a vehicle and holding your head is not the best way to communicate with a casualty, and definitely not to assess the casualty. But if that's the only position you can get to a casualty, that's where you've got to go. But if it's not, put yourself in a better position.
You can see.
Can I just jump?
Sorry, go on, Rob.
Yeah, like I say, quite new to the team, and that's what I've noticed massively since being in the team. Whenever I've seen usually programs on the TV and real rescues and other things, 9 times out of 10 the casualty the sat behind the casualty holding the cease-point, not a very good vantage point at all. Like the boy said initially, if you have got it open in the airway and that's the only place you can get, then yeah, you do that straight away. But then it's all about that coming back to that communication. That look, I need someone else to take this cease-point so I get myself in that front seat so I can play about the bit of stuff and get yourself where you got on that casualty. Because as you know, your colour, their demeanour, and how they're looking at it. If they're going grey and you're sat behind them, you've got no idea what's happening, so you really need eyes on.
There's nothing more ridiculous, than when you see, a team working on a vehicle or working with a casualty for 20, 30 minutes to then see a doctor show up and just say to the casualty, "Can you get out?" And they go, "Yeah." And they just stand up and get out of the vehicle. And you think, well, hang on a minute, guys, where was the common sense approach from us? Where was the communication with the casualty? If they were that able, why weren't we working with them?
Big thing, so I'm going on a medic route as well. We got to look at the mechanism of injury. If the car's all smashed up, it's hard to tell now because of crumple zones and stuff like that. Because sometimes you see a car and you think, wow. And like you say, the passenger or the driver, an engine. So we always got to treat for the worst case scenario. If there's massive injuries or if there's perhaps alcohol or some other kind of substances, we still got to treat for the worst case scenario, certainly on the road. And then, if the medical professional teams otherwise, we can try and use the casualty, like Shaun said, to our advantage. Can you wind down the window? Are you okay with it? Get him to do stuff from his position to help us out. But ultimately, we've got to treat for the worst case scenario and be proven otherwise, I think.
I think it's it's a good understanding, and it goes back to that word, that trust between the team and the crew through communication about the levels of entrapment of the casualty. And just to touch on the point you mentioned there about a casualty being able to be walked out of the vehicle, obviously that is something that the medical professionals are looking to do more and more now. But from a rescue perspective, it's about us providing them space if something goes wrong. Let's say that casualty decides to do a twisting movement to get their legs out of the vehicle and then they decide they can't move. So it's about us creating what we can do as a rescue service for our medical friends should that incident happen where things go wrong. It's about that understanding of the planning phase, having that immediate plan, that emergency plan and that full plan. And we spoke about, as a crew, if we've got a heavily deformed vehicle and we'll get medics in to create the internal space creation, and we'll possibly use the vehicle systems to recline seats to get the casualty into an extrication pathway position. But we'd obviously heavily understand that by doing that, we may be compromising an emergency plan. So until we've got an emergency plan in place, which is valid, then we might evolve that emergency plan. Then once that seat has been reclined, we may change the emergency plan, for argument's sake, from a driver's doorway to then the rear of the vehicle, because we might have got the back seats out of the car. Okay. But at least we've got enough space around the casualty to get hands on them, to have a casualty-centred rescue, moving them out on a board in a safe manner. And it's about us communicating that effectively to our colleagues within the ambulance service and the doctors, that should that casualty decide, I'm okay to get out of the car, and they make that movement and it's, I can't do that, I don't want to get out, then we have to start putting those plans in place before that happens.
So talking about, taking us back to that space creation, you said there about sort of priority plans, emergency plans. Some people will recognise these as sort of A and B plans. What are the most sort of common methods? And I know it's hard to generalise with that sort of thing, but Are there any sort of golden methods, golden extrications in a worst case scenario whereby it's going to have to be a complete full extrication from yourselves? How does that work from an A and B plan for anybody that's completely unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, it's just for us, obviously, we work on immediate, emergency and full plan. So it's like I said, our understanding of what an immediate plan is, that might be something as rudimental as an open window. We might have to manhandle a casualty out through a window because we're going straight into CPR because they're that way inclined. The emergency plan is when you've got a little bit more time to play with. They've got a breathing rate, they've got a pulse rate, but they're outside the goalpost of life essentially, and we need to get them out quickly. And as long as they're not entrapped, we might do something as simple as popping a door, cutting a door, stay and ratcheting it round, and then the casualties will all rolled out of the vehicle as long as they're not entrapped. But then if they're stable, but they've got injuries that will dictate a more casualty-centered approach in managing those injuries, then we will look to try and create as much space in and around that casualty through internal space creation and external space creation, but look to do that in the quickest and the most efficient way possible. It doesn't necessarily mean the roof has got to come off every time. It might mean we might be taking a side out of the vehicle so we don't have to deal with the high boron, high tensile strength and the B-posts and the running rails. It might be that we're doing what we tend to call a rear seat rip down, where we use the spreaders and the ram to try and rip the seats down in the back, and we've got an inline extrication pathway out to the back of the vehicle. We're tending to do more roof folds now because there's a lot less cuts involved, and obviously we can put the cuts in place if we've got inclement weather and the casualty needs to be protected from rain and the cold temperatures. We can leave the roof in situ. Once our colleagues from the ambulance service arrive with transport, we can then fold the roof up and then extricate the casualty after. So there's lots of different ways, but the main thing to understand is having the plan has got to be valid for what that casualty's injuries are dictating, and certainly it's about being flexible and understanding that if that casualty is entrapped in the vehicle, physically entrapped, then we've got to deal with that entrapment first before we move on to the main plan. Because there's no point in us making a massive amount of space if our casualty is still stuck underneath the dashboard because we still haven't dealt with it. We've got to deal with that first. And, operational experience tells me that 9 times out of 10, once you've dealt with that entrapment, your casualty will be coming out of that pathway you've created as an emergency pathway. So you may not have the time to get that main plan in place.
Yeah.
But it's understanding as well that we're trying to advocate that if you've got a heavily deformed vehicle, we will look to try and reshape that vehicle as well with rams to try and get that back to its original position, take the tension, strength out of the material. So it makes it a lot safer for us as a crew when we're putting cuts and spreads in. You haven't got the material acting violently when you're releasing that tension within the materials.
And some of the things Rod touched on there, particularly about internal entrapment, we as for the rescue, we always work from the outside in, and sometimes we've got to change our forward process of the inside out. So if we can release internal entrapment around that casualty as soon as practically possible, that could be via pushing seats back, lifting dashboards slightly with steering wheels, or even just pushing pedals around or letting the casualty move their feet. That once you release that internal entrapment, you have released that casualty. Because the openings are there then. So think about planning from the inside out. If you're incident commander, when you go there, if you can identify the internal entrapments early and get them released simultaneously as we reshape in a vehicle, that casualty will come out far quicker. So a lot of rescues out the world, we work from the outside in, we make the big spaces all the way in, and guess what? That casualty won't come out until we release that internal entrapment. So doing that is priority, in fact, instead of doing all the big and wonderful things sometimes. And we've seen that for real. So changing things up on their head slightly,
Yeah. Oh, because I suppose otherwise you can accidentally walk yourself down an alleyway where suddenly the casualty deteriorates rapidly and you've still not fully, relieved that tension. You've not really released them internally. And despite the fact you've spent 20 minutes or even 15 minutes making lots of space creation externally, you're no further forward. You feel like you are, but you're not, and that you could still lose that casualty trapped inside the vehicle.
Yeah, and that's something we've drilled into all our personnel over the years. whether that's via the challenge scenarios or even for real. Get that in the early entrapment. If the casualty is free to move, then we've got time to make all that space for, a casualty-centered rescue in alignment or whatever else needs doing. So that's something we have always tried to achieve. And I say something, and I keep things very simple. If you can create that 2-inch force field around any casualty of them three, it might not be pretty, but we'll still get them out under control then. Yeah. Instead of, like you said, we make that massive space on the exterior and we still can't release those casualties,
And just to add on saying there is, everything we've talked about so far has been based on one person. More commonly, it is for people in one vehicle. So we try to really train as you play. So we are setting up training scenarios, whether it's for the team or whether it's in our training centre in Cardiff Gate, where we are using multiple people in one vehicle to get that planning phase working around what is going to be the priority casualty, what is the space we need. So, and sometimes that simple things, like Roger has already mentioned, but it can often be more complex if we have to deal with, making bigger internal space.
Mm. How do you deal with triaging different casualties? Because I think from a public perspective, because we have a number of members of the public that sometimes see people screaming and shouting in vehicles and are unsure why they're not given the attention that perhaps people think they should be given when you're dealing with multiple casualties. So could you just expand on how you assess casualties in terms of who is a priority and why?
Yeah, well, obviously all of our training, we're always linking in with our clinical leads, and we're fortunate in South Wales. We've got Heart that's on the M4 corridor. We've got our WASP service as well, and we're learning off them. And for the most simplistic approach for us is, we are not doctors, so what can we do to assess a person very quickly? And for me, that always comes down to the simple output scale. So is the person alert? Are they responsive to voice? Are they responsive to pain? Or are they completely unresponsive? And that simple sliding scale there is going to determine which category gives us initial priority. More times than less, the person who's very vocal and loud is obviously going to be A on the output scale, to the person who is very quiet, being unresponsive with a potential compromised airway or is catastrophically bleeding. They're going to require our priority sooner than the person who's more vocal. So we tend to we train in that methodology so that anybody in our team can revert back to that sliding scale and start to prioritise the people that we see as more time critical.
It's a complete backwards thinking for members of the public, though, isn't it? When you see people screaming and shouting, and it would appear on the face of it that attention is being given to somebody else who doesn't, on the face of it, appear like they're struggling as much. But like I say, when they get quiet and they start murmuring or they're potentially bleeding out from somewhere else, they're not going to scream and shout.
No, and that's about then that verbalisation within the team, whether that's within this team or whether that's operationally, really getting that command and control in place so that you're implementing what could potentially be an emergency extrication. And like the boys already mentioned, that might be a small space, but a simple space with a simple pedal removal or opening a door that's already going to be open for us and simply cutting the door stay with a bolt cropper is not even being that physical. And that casualty is going to be removed from that scene quickly based on their injury. So if there was a catastrophic bleed, that's going to determine the priority of that casualty come out of that vehicle very, very quickly. And I think across all the services, we all work within that outcome scale. That keeps it simple for us. There's an easy way to prioritise people, and we are targeted then to the people that are going to need us more quickly and to the people that we can spend more time in the extrication phase with. From a service perspective, and we've done a fair bit of work in the research behind it, is we're looking to try and add vehicle relocation into that stability phase of the general 6 phases. Okay. So if you, for example, if you've got a vehicle wrapped around a tree and it's going to be a complex extrication, we will look to try and relocate that vehicle using winches away to a safe area and then go to work with the extrication pathways. Time spent with, a couple of minutes winching away from a tree will save you maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes carrying out a complex extrication. Yeah. So it gets a casualty to a definitive care a lot quicker, and that's been advocated by the Royal College of Surgeons.
That's got to be a scary thought for a lot of firefighters listening, and it shouldn't be. I hear what you're saying, but when somebody's had that initial impact and the vehicle's come to rest, even if it is wrapped around a tree, that call to, attach strops and winch a vehicle still with the casualty in it, potentially, still experiencing some pain. That's a brave call. And like you say, it's backed up by the Royal College of Nursing, but that's going to be quite a difficult sell, do you think, to certain members?
It has been difficult to sell to our own service in a sense, but what we advocate is, we've developed it, we've seen other countries across the world advocating it. But as long as a casualty carer, it doesn't have to be fire service, but a paramedic can get in the vehicle and actually stabilise the casualty in the sense of physically stabilise them within the vehicle, make sure they're maintaining an open airway. As long as it can be done safely, we can look to relocate the vehicle. It doesn't, it might be a winch, it might be a spreader against a wall or a ram against a wall or a barrier. And we've even got our own heavy lifting cranes within our own service. So if you've got Shaun touched on it earlier, a car up or down an embankment within the range of our crane, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the pouring down rain, that's obviously promoting firefighter safety as well, carrying heavy equipment down embankments. We will look to try and stabilise that vehicle, relocate it to a safe area, and then go to work on the vehicle in a safer manner.
And over the years, Peter, it's something I've been in the service quite a long period of time, and Roger's mentioned those trees and all the other things. I've seen at RTC live instance, we've fought with the environment to rescue the people, but all we have to do is control the environment a little bit better. So like Roger said, relocate it. It doesn't mean relocating it 100 foot away. This means relocating 2 foot away or possibly less to give you that fighting chance to create that cell around the casualty or that rescue cell to extract them. Yeah. And it is a cultural. Like I said, I've been involved in it a long time. It's taken me 25 years to get this. You're not going to fight with nature sometimes, but what you could do is take it, away from those hazards. By doing that, you've got to communicate with your paramedics, you've got to communicate with your rescuers and saying this is what we will do and make it as controlled as possible. Because I've been there, we've left people in situ and sadly they haven't survived because we haven't made those decisions early and communicated them early, of relocating. So this is something the service has taken on. Some parts of the world, Australasia, they do it to great effect because they get high-speed impacts around some of their structures. They're not going to fight with, some of in the environment. They'll just move the vehicle and the rescue casualties away to formulate that rescue,
And just to touch on the back of what Shaun said, what we try to do then is work directly with our partners that are going to be responding to these emergencies, and we give them that exposure of relocation. So that might be rewriting a car to all four wheels, where a firefighter and a paramedic is in that vehicle in a training scenario. But there's an awareness then across all the services, and there's that exposure of what we can achieve and how we can do it, so that it almost then becomes clinically led. So the paramedics are saying, is there an opportunity to rewrite this vehicle? Can we move the casualty? And then they are introducing the stability medication that they need to give that person, or moving them into a more suitable position in the vehicle. So when that relocation phase is happening, it's a joint working scenario.
It does make so much sense when you say, like you say, if you've had a vehicle leave a main carriageway down an embankment and it's stuck rooted in some trees, progress is going to be so chronically slow. And like you say, the case studies looking back at 30-40 minute extrications where the casualty unfortunately doesn't survive because progress is just so slow.
Yeah, and like I said, just put it in a position where you can work on it. That could be, X amount of feet away, or inches away if that needs to be. Take it away from that obstacle. If that obstacle is causing you so much problem you can't deal with the obstacle, guess what? You move the vehicle with the casualty under control, like Les said, in a slow, methodical, measured way. And like you said, put mechanical aids in place on our vehicles, from winching to, we've adapted cranes with lower regulations on there. So it's not lifting it 30 foot in the air. This is lifting it 2 inches along the floor to a place where we can operate on it and we can give us a casualty a fighting chance. And that's what we're about,
Before we move on, I just wanted to double click on glass management and sort of techniques and best methods that we've sort of seen utilised there.
Yeah, and glass management, again, as a team and as a service, the days of smashing every piece of glass in the vehicle doesn't have to happen. It's just about managing the glass effectively for what the extrication pathway is going to be. And certainly with new vehicle technology now, manufacturers are looking to put in laminated glass into the side windows as well as the windscreens and tailgates. And obviously some manufacturers like your Premier Leagues, like your BMWs, Audis, are also looking to use polycarbonate in their side windows as well as windscreens. So it's about being aware that the days of smashing glass are probably numbered, shall we say. But yeah, we will look to just manage it as opposed to breaking every piece of glass. We've sort of got the knowledge and skills now within ourselves as a crew and a team that, you know, a simple thing, just a sharp sheet over an open door, is managing that piece of glass. So we could try and spread or cut the door off without having to deal with the glass. You know, we got other elements available to us within our service, such as plaquettes, you know, sticky cling film, should we call it? Yeah. We can just put on the screens and the pieces of glass, and we can spread or cut doors off with that in situ. And if the glass does break, then it's held in situ. So, but everything is casualty centred, and we won't attack glass until the casualty has been covered by a clear plastic sheet, and we'll only deal with the glass for the plan that we're putting in place. So that's where we're going as a crew and a service.
So finally, as a sort of final piece of extrication and removing the casualty from the vehicle, we've seen introduction of longboards, KEDs, skeds, all different methods of getting them out. What's some of the more commonly recognised pieces of equipment that you use for extrication?
I think the most ambulance services and medics around the country have got their protocols in casualty management. And in Wales, I believe that if the casualty has got suspected C-spine injuries, then they will look to try and KED, collar and longboard a casualty out of the vehicle. But if a casualty is not displaying C-spine injuries, then we will look to try and just utilise a longboard. The problem is with KEDs is those of us who had the experience of using them, to try and fit the KED effectively on somebody within the closed environment of a car, then you need to create that space around the casualty to put it on. So, putting a KED on somebody who's sat up, bolt upright in a driver's seat is going to be quite difficult, and I would question its effectiveness without creating the space around the casualty to get them out. We sort of tend to lean towards longboards or half-boards as opposed to KEDs and skeds. But, you know, we have seen and we have operationally done on incidents, working with our colleagues from the ambulance service, used all the means available to us to extricate casualties out.
I think as well, like, the longboard for us is just a piece of equipment to help us manage our casualty or mobilise our casualty from where they are to a point of safety. And then for that medical intervention then to take over, whether they need splint in or whether they're going to be put into a KED or a back mattress. So that board is almost a tool, exactly like our extrication equipment, just to facilitate us extricating our casualty and keeping them immobilised during that phase.
Is there any final pieces you think from a team approach that we want to cover off?
I just think from a team approach, 6 phases are very, very important, but we've touched on communication, but it's also being sympathetic to each other. That's another word we use a lot in the extrication team, that, you know, everything has got its place, but you've got to be sympathetic to the other rescuers. You've got to be, you know, in line. So some things jump ahead of each other. You may end up turning. The glass management might go in effect slightly before space creation, right? The 6 phases are there to build on a rescue. But sometimes you can jump ahead of one and then come back. It all depends on that scenario. Yeah. But each rescue has got to be sympathetic to each other. And that could be from a paramedic perspective to us, and us to a paramedic, and us to the casualty. And even from within the team, we've got 3 elements within the team. You have the incident commander, you have the medical people working on the people in the car, and then you've got the technical physical team. So if it's all about the OIC and that individual showboat and whatever they wouldn't get it. If it's all about technical, that's going to really affect the medical rescue of that casualty. So each area, and this is actually for real at the incident too, just be sympathetic to each other, you know, and how you line yourself up. And that goes back to, like Roger said, and we keep drumming it in, is about the communication.
Coming out and going into the car is vitally important to the whole operation.
So as a team that's sort of competing at that level, you know, you're a successful international world team, how often do you realistically need to be training for this? For any services that hear the success that you guys have experienced, it sounds like you know, this needs to be quite a regular thing? And is it sustainable? How often do you guys train for this?
In the off season, we look to try and keep training at least once a month. It's obviously difficult now that we all work in different areas within the service, so trying to get the time and availability for everybody to get together is very difficult. But when the season starts from a competition season, we will look to try and train at least 2 or 3 times a month to keep our hand in, and, you know, just continue with our team development and the dynamic development within the team. And, you know, we're always, a kind of phrase within our team, every day's a school day. So we're always looking to learn something new and, you know, take anything on board.
Who's the best in the world at this at the moment? You know, competing at these levels. You guys have obviously had some great success, but who are the best in the world and who are the main sort of top 3?
We dare to say any team is the best in the world. If you're looking at the success over the last 20 years, I suppose a lot of people would think we are, but we never think ourselves as that. We're always there to help other teams. We've been, you know, within UK, around the world, we will engage with any team that has help, you know, need any help or guidance, whether that's in the setup of a team or the dynamics or even technical information. We will always try to be out, because that's what it's all about. You know, we have a huge amount of success. We have a lot of fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Never will. Never. You know, that's not in our DNA. And we also are. You know, I mean, we're all there for each other, whether it's a Welsh thing or not. But it's really paid dividends over the years. We work hard and play hard.
Yeah.
But you know, the team's been going for a long period of time. And we just want to take it forward with new people that have the same sort of like ethos going forward. Everybody's of that same set mindset. You know, I mean, no one's got all the answers, and we'll definitely not. But we'll just adapt things as we always say. We put it in the blender, work it out, and then, you know, 2022 is going to look different to 2021 and on all the years to come. So that's where we are as a group. And everybody says, what's the secret of the team? Over the years, the secret of the team, we are all, as we call it in Wales, buddies. We're friends. We're friends on the team, but we're friends outside, and we work for each other really hard, and we look after each other too. So, yeah, that classes as the best team. Let other people make that statement, but we will never make that statement as a team.
It has been a pretty impressive run, though. I mean, how is it 6 World Championships now? How many have we got now?
We got 7 World Championships over the period of time. We've up to about 5 British Championships, Welsh Championships. Yeah, and we've always done okay. We're always in the mix. You know, some things you get an element of luck sometimes that runs with you, but we make our own luck too. And I think it's having that flexibility. If things are not going right, we'll put our foot in the ball really quickly at a scenario or challenge, and we'll adapt it quickly. You know what I mean? Instead of just, I think you mentioned earlier on, sometimes we go down a road like, and we just keep on that road. We won't do that. If it's not working out, we'll put our foot in the ball. And we're sponges too. We haven't got all the answers. We see things in new developing teams sometimes. We think, wow, that is fantastic. We might take it away and adapt it slightly. But we're very much open to learning new skills and stuff like that. But yeah, we've done okay, and hopefully we'll continue doing okay.
I think as well, just to add on the back of what Shaun's saying, we're very fortunate that the people that we, for better word, compete against then or with, we're all there for the same reason, which is to improve and learn and share our knowledge with our own peers, our own services. But also, the organisations that support us, like the UKRO, the World Wrestling Organisation, we get the feedback from them. They give us critique or positivity, and for us, you know, we've been right at the bottom of the list to right at the top, but that there's always room in there for improvement. So we come back to our service, we get feedback from them, and we're always on that cycle. So one day where you might have performed very well, the next day you're not performing very well, and as a team we recognise that, and even if our debrief is positive, we always come away from it with negativity and things that we could have improved on. I think that's what keeps us reinventing, you know. So that's the way we try to work.
Striking that balance of being self-critical, but not getting down on yourself and being too pessimistic about your performance. But like you say, being that eternal student, I suppose.
A perfect example. Many years ago, we ended up winning the challenge. Many years ago now, we ended up coming 43rd in the UK.
That's rough,
right? Yeah, we came 43rd, right? Right. That's when there was lots of teams. 6 weeks later, after much deliberation, much training, we managed to go to our first world challenge and come third in the world. Jesus. That was down to the personalities in that team smashing themselves. Sometimes it goes right, sometimes it doesn't. But we work hard at that. So I use that as an example when I'm speaking to all new teams. You'll have your good days, you'll have your bad days, but just keep going and keep enjoying it. Don't get too beat yourself up. I think fire rescue service personnel are competitive people. They always want to do the best. But sometimes, we press the self-destruct button ourselves. Yeah. We go back, the minibus or the van going back from any challenge is always full of debate. What could we do better? Yeah. And that is successful or not either. It's always what can we do better.
Now, you guys have clearly had some massive experience along your careers. Everybody seems to have achieved a rank or a level of experience in some aspect of it. But a big part of the podcast is we get a lot of new recruits. We get a lot of people either wanting to join or just joining the fire service, and they have an idea and an impression of what training is going to look like. So I wanted to ask, from one of you, what was basic training like in Wales, and how did that sort of take shape?
I'll answer this one. I was quite a late starter in the fire service. I tried 18 times, got through to interview, final interview. Best part of 20 years I was trying to get in. Something I was always aspired to do. I've got family members who were parts of different brigades and whatnot. So I was actually like 39/40 joining the fire service. It was quite strange. At that age, obviously, I had a bit of life experience and whatnot, going to the new boy again. But for me, it was everything I thought it would have been and a bit more, really. It was quite hard going back to the classroom at that stage in my life. There's a lot of things to learn. The training facilities itself were fantastic. The instructors we had and the people on the course, such a dynamic range of people, all ages, all different creeds and races. It was just a fantastic experience in close contact with a lot of people who I was on the course with, and the trainers on the course too.
What did you do before you joined the fire service?
That's confidential.
Special forces, maybe, I don't know.
You get a lot of military people, ex-military joining, and ex-police and ex-other services got really interesting jobs. I left school and by default kind of started a summer job down the wholesale food centre. I ended up staying in that game for 20 years. And people don't believe it when I say it, but I was actually a wholesale flour seller.
Nice.
So people usually take a step back when I say that, but I'm not going to be a firefighter.
Did you have any thoughts of how sort of disciplined it would be? Because some people, like you said, sometimes the fire service attracts a lot of ex-forces. They're looking for that camaraderie. They're looking for a similar bit of structure, a similar bit of discipline. But in my personal experience, I feel like people coming into the fire service these days, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, we don't always have as much of a disciplined, regimented approach to some training schools across the UK. Do you think we need to be as disciplined as we once were? And do you think that discipline's important in the fire service, I suppose?
For me, 100%. It's definitely a disciplined service. Like everything, there's ranges to what you want to go. The days of feasting people around the yard, holding up the big brass standpipe or whatever it was, running around with. I think those days are gone when you're soaking people with brown mold.
Didn't do me no harm.
There's definitely got to be discipline, which goes hand in hand with respect. I think like we said back to Rob, his initial kind of 360. We got to be eyeing that job up ourselves, knowing what we got to do, thinking it in our head, get it ready. So the minute he says it's safe to go, we're going. So. Yeah, I think discipline is a huge part of being part of the service.
I think there's to some new recruits though, they some of them struggle with the being shouted at, and I don't want to get into any kind of cotton wool culture conversation, but people struggle sometimes with that aspect of it is still an emergency services. Yes, there's a time in the training room for debate, for giving your input, everybody having a collective conversation. But like you've said, when you're on the incident ground or when you're on the drill ground, decisions made and instruction is given. Sometimes it's given very firm and it's very assertive. Is that the same as it used to be?
I think it is different. Culture is different now. I think what it is about exposure to. It's an exposure to discipline.
Yeah.
There's an element when normal station life is, we all talk to each other, and that's okay. But then, like Roger said, 3 o'clock in the morning it's raining. It needs to go into that discipline environment because that's the most effective environment. The military doing it for centuries, create a discipline element. So when they're they're in the heat of the battle, the decisions, and everybody listens to it. So if you don't expose people to that discipline element, we are not so efficient as an organisation when the times are hard. And it is, we're dealing with a property fire or a factory fire, the large-scale incidents or RDCs. It needs to be disciplined. It needs to be organised. It's not there for debate. It's not there for challenges back and forth. And this is all about, I think, our recruits need to be exposed to it. I wouldn't say be stiff against it, but definitely exposed to it. And there's a reason why. It's a proven culture over the years, and there's a reason why, because Joe Public, when they're in these emergency situations, they depend on us to be calm, collective, and disciplined. So if we don't instill that into our recruits, I honestly don't think we'll be up against it in the future as an organisation across the world. That's my point of view, and I'm coming to the end of it anyway. So, and I've been in the discipline organisation since I was 16 years old. I'm ex-military, I'm for it, but it needs to be balanced.
Definitely.
I think it's not personal, is it? Some of the situation dynamic. It's about getting that dynamic information across, and sometimes that involves speaking with urgency, doesn't it? And that can be seen as raising a voice.
Not necessarily shouting at the individual, but shouting to get the point across. That's what you've got to remember the differences. And so most of us got children. If it's a safety critical thing, then you're going to shout. They got to know they got to stop what they're doing, or pay attention. So it's no different to on an operational playground.
No. Has there ever been for any of you the challenge personally from family? Because speaking to some recruits, their partners might be worried about them joining the fire service. It's a dangerous job. Have any of you ever experienced pushback? Not necessarily a lack of support, but some people don't want their family members joining the fire service because it's a dangerous job still.
I think I can only speak for myself. My family's been massively supportive of my career over the years. When I originally decided I wanted to join the fire service, there was that element of fear, shall we say, that obviously it's a dangerous role that you're taking, but the support outweighed that fear, and they knew that I was going into a professional a job, and obviously they provided me with that support. So I've not really experienced any pushback myself. But obviously being a parent now myself, and having a 17-year-old daughter who is keen and wanting to join the fire service, obviously I'm sort of having, from my experiences over the years and the situations that I've been exposed to, there is that element of, do I really want my daughter doing that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to provide her with the support that she needs if that's the career path she wants to go down, because of the support that I've not only received from my family but also the colleagues that I've worked with along the way. And that comes back down to what we've been talking about for the morning, is about trust and friendships. And I think the fire service as a whole around the world, it is that term brotherhood and sisterhood now. And these days, once you're in it, it's very much like the military. Once you've joined, you're in it for life. And I don't think there's a better job in the world that can give you that.
And for me, mate, like I said, I was a bit older coming in. I had 4 children in school. My wife knew I'd always aspired to be a firefighter, and it's something I always loved to do. The financial thing was a big part of it for me, because as most of us are firefighters, and we know it's not perhaps the best financial road to take, but the job itself is, you're millionaires in job satisfaction and everything else, just the whole ethos. I just can't say enough about the job, and the money, quality of life and everything else. The money just goes by the by, really. We all join, we want to help people, we want to be better people, we want to be part of a big family, and that's exactly what the fire.
It is difficult for people, though, and try and strike that balance with the financial aspect. I just wanted to ask about, so you said you had a 17-year-old daughter that was had a passion for the job and that sort of stuff. We've had a number of female firefighters. We're one of the first female firefighters in the UK ever to come on the show as well, speaking about banter and different behaviours in the fire service. Now, it's really important that we still keep that watch-based, station-based banter. It's a huge part of being able to pull the pressure release valve on people's tense environments, some of the incidents that we have to attend. But thinking back to some of the stuff that I've certainly experienced in my career, is there any nervousness around a daughter, a young woman coming into the service? And do you think things have changed from the days where perhaps some behaviours would be inappropriate? And is there anything that you think about when you think about your daughter joining the job?
I've been lucky. I've been 25 years in the job now, and I've never really experienced any sort of negative banter or behaviour to any of my colleagues within the service and stations which I've worked on. To coin the phrase Les said earlier on, we all know what the fire service is about, and banter is a big part of the fire service. And, it's understanding that a lot of the banter we experience is not personal. It's not meant to be malicious or hurtful in any way, but it's understanding that if that person does get upset by what is said or whatever, we're living in an open and approachable environment, and that's something we sort of promote within our service. That if Rob said something to me, or one of the boys said something to me and I disagreed with it, I'm quite happy that I can go and approach them and tell them I'm not happy with it. And I think that sort of is instilled in the way in which you bring your children up as well. I've always taught my daughter and my son, if somebody upsets you, just go and talk to them first, and then explain the situation, and then more often than not that will get sorted out in an amicable fashion. I think that's the way we deal with ourselves in the fire service, and that's what I've experienced. I wouldn't have any reservations with her. She probably had worse incidents of banter and bullying, shall we say, school, than what she would probably experience within the service.
Yeah, most definitely. Have any of you ever experienced any sort of setbacks? We've said about it being a dangerous job. Have any of you ever experienced an injury in the job or had a setback, and how has anybody dealt with that?
I think the team have been quite lucky about injuries in the job. We've had, sporting injuries outside work. That's quite complicated your role to a certain extent, but South Wales Fire Service, a lot of us have played sport for the service. They've been very supportive in that element. Injuries are incidents, it does happen. It happens less now because we're far more, diligent in everything we do and safety conscious. We still get the job done, but we do it in a far more controlled measure, and we do learn far better now than we used to years ago, because we used to think, that's just the done thing. No, the team as a whole, and a lot of people through the team, other than, no disrespect, non-fire service related illnesses, and that have kept a clean bill of health, basically.
That's lucky, I think, because I think a lot of people have experienced different aspects during their career, and it adds sort of to the mental aspect as well, with people trying to struggle through setbacks like that. I wanted to ask sort of an overarching question to sort of everybody in the team, really, about what do you think the best thing about the job is?
For me, I think obviously coming into the job is again that awareness when you're in this environment of the extended family you've inherited. So for me, that's the ability to pick up the phone, have somebody from my watch, my station, or somebody who's on a completely different station to me that I've previously worked on, and have that support network around you that you never even knew was going to exist. And for me, that's a really rewarding thing to be part of. Is we're all in them situations where, especially like for what we've experienced just recently with the COVID pandemic, is having them support networks around you. You've got them communication avenues. So for me, that's something I never even thought about coming into this job, is how big my family would get and how many things I would have to buy people for Christmas.
What is some of the best characteristics or essential characteristics that are needed to be a firefighter?
Well, respectful, resilience is a massive thing. Professional goes without saying. We always try to be professional, dynamic. Whatever we do is inevitably dynamic. Trustworthy is a huge part of it. We're very privileged. We're viewed in a good eye from our partners and the public. So, trustworthy is up there. We touched on it earlier: discipline, dedication, and caring. I think they're the ones, if I have to mention, the ones that sums us all up there,
Well, I think, those are basically our key characteristics of the service there, but something always jumps out to me, which I've seen over many a year. If we have passionate firefighters for the role and for each other and our colleagues around us, we want to do the right thing for each other, and be there for each other, and don't take ourselves seriously. I think those are key areas, but I'm seeing the service, the more drive and passionate individuals, those individuals always come to the top. And when we come to the top, but be that recognised person on that watch because they have a passion for the job, for looking after people and being there for each other. So that could be your 30-year in firefighter who's that key person on that watch, but also can be that, chief fire officer, 30 years, who's still got passion and drive for the job. Never lose that. And I think everybody will be in a good place. So to me, that is an essential characteristic to everybody's career.
Love it. Now, Rog, as a sort of leader in your role, what are some of the essential characteristics of a leader? If you wanted to be a great leader in the fire service, what qualities is it essential for you to have?
I think it's just about being honest about yourself, being able to listen to other people and learn from other people, being adaptability as well. Those are some of the key things I myself as a person. I think Shaun said earlier on, I think nobody knows everything, certainly within the fire service. And it's a kind of phrase we use as a team: to walk the walk, you've got to talk the talk. And not many people can do that because they don't know everything. And being aware of that yourself and being willing to listen and learn off other people and just being a good communicator is the last thing. It's probably one of the words that we use most as a person, as a team, and as a service. Is being a good communicator will win you many battles.
100%.
Only if I can just put off the end of that is something we have always done in this team is there's no designated rank amongst anybody here. So Roger's the station manager, put in the team leader, and that opens him up to everybody else within the playing field. And I think that's really important for us. It doesn't create any barriers within our team. Everybody is open to receive feedback, whether it's positive, criticism, whatever it might be. But not having any rank structure doesn't mean that we all listen to Rog, but it just gives us ability amongst each other that everybody's got an equal place and is on the same playing field.
I think some of the key things of leadership is particularly in our RTC at times, where we're in that role or operational, be a visual leader. Take up that position, be that person people come to you. I think sometimes people can be shrinking violets. I've seen a lot of late. Be that visual leader. You've got to put trust in people, given the autonomy to make their own decisions. We've got fantastic people in the fire service throughout. Give them that trust, give them that delegation. But as you're giving it, have a bit of empathy. So try and put yourself in those fire boots of the other person you've just spoken to, and then you almost get the best decisions going forward. And it can be the most productive way to take things forward. So there's a loads there, but I think, being there for each other and don't take yourself too seriously. The job is the best job in the world. I've done quite a lot of things in my career and my life, but making sure you're there for each other. And that's, you're not going to be a millionaire in the fire and rescue service. But like someone just said, you can be a millionaire in the quality of your work. But it's sometimes what you get out is what you put into. And I've seen that over a long career,
Love it. I wanted to ask, sort of as we're closing down, about mental health. It's a big thing we try and discuss every now and again on the podcast, because having all the exposure you guys have, focusing on road traffic collisions and accidents and incidents where you can go to fatalities and stuff like that. Is there any methods you guys have found particularly useful in keeping that balance of mental health alongside your physical health?
Yeah, we just all mental.
Just be around people that are mental as well. Is that it?
No, I think we all go away. We all leave an incident, whether it's in the back of the truck, whether it's in a car, whether it's back on the stations, and that you always take that images in your head and the sounds in your head. But it's having a chat with each other. You touched on banter back and forth. Sometimes it's perceived in the wrong manner. But that's also, a diffusing system that we use really effectively. And we also, I think we've all mentioned it, when you're back on the watch or whether you're in the team, we're a family. And like any good family, you keep an eye out for each other.
Yeah.
And I think that is sometimes the most simplistic thing to deal with is stress. It is speaking about it, but that's sometimes the hardest thing to do at first too. Once you've said about it, it seems to help you out. But I think those the dynamics over that washroom table or back of the station, I think it is something that can't be underestimated. It may not be as immediately after, it may be a couple of months later. I think that's key. A lot of services South Wales now, we've got a very active trim and de-stress systems in place, which is fantastic. We've taken on board learning from possibly the military, what they've had massive traumatic exposure. So I think a lot of services are getting up to speed to it now, and it's not becoming such a, years ago when I came in, it was like, you mentioned in the wrong words there, but I think people realise now the benefit of looking after each other, looking after each other's welfare. I think it's massive, and that's where we as a service, I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything.
Just back to down communication again, like I said, being in an environment where you're not afraid to say what you want to say, and like Shaun has rightly said, from a team perspective, we all know each other on a personal level very, very closely, and it is a family. And likewise, that's the same on the watches as well that we've all worked on, and we've all got close colleagues within the service that you know yourself when somebody's not acting their normal selves. And I think it's just something that's instilled in us over the years, that we're not afraid to ask that question, are you okay? And, whatever the answer back is, like I said, we're more than happy to deal with whatever the answer is and be there for that person.
I think that's a really important point.
I think it's key going forward, and we haven't really touched on it, the massive benefit United Kingdom Rescue Organisation, UKRO and the World Rescue Organisation have done. So without, we recognise as a rescue team, but without them in the background trying to drive things forward and, new technology, new ways of thinking, we wouldn't have had that platform to be the team we are. So, and South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, our service, they've been fantastic too, without them supporting us along the way. It's been a bumpy road in the early days, but now they support it and they definitely see the benefits. I think each and one of us in this room and all our people, who come through the team have managed to influence the service and taking it forward, particularly RPC, others, without UKRO to do that. I think that's been key. So
I just wanted to say as well, obviously we don't put the visual out on the podcast, but just for the benefit of everybody listening, what's been a very subtle but important distinction to make is the fact that whilst I've been speaking to different members of the team, you guys have been passing notes around, you've been making poignant notes down on the paper and sort of passing it to each other. And I just think that's a really important non-visual thing for people to understand, that that's sort of how a great incident evolves. You're all sort of supporting each other. You're all seeing and hearing different things, making observations and passing those hints and tips.
Can I say something there, off tape?
I was going to say, that's usually what happens. You put it down and go, how long is this guy going to keep talking?
Well, that was on page one.
Yeah, I was on there as well. I'm bored. I thought you said it was going to be half an hour. No, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, fellas. I really appreciate it. If some people want to find out more about the team, where's the best place for them to go?
No, I just wanted to say, mate, as well, I thought, because you mentioned earlier about people not wanting to in front of the stage and all that. We do it operationally, going down watching it when there's other rescue teams watching you and stuff like that. You really put yourself out there, and it is a scary thing. And I was kind of like bulldozed into it in a way by Les. It's something I always would have liked to. I didn't think I was up to the mark, and not by nowhere near up to the standard to do it. But anyone who does want to have a go, put yourself out there and have a go with it. Because I'm part of a little sort of thing as well. And I look back to our first run at there, and it was absolutely diabolical. But the learning process and the journey you travel in a short space of time is amazing. Learning off other people, and we all said they're all there to help you. And you're not going to get exposure unless you put yourself out there and put yourself on the line. But the benefits are amazing.
And it is a competition environment when we go to this. You have got your UKRO assessors and WRO assessors. But all the feedback is always positive. Consider this, consider that. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. But it's all about developing people. Individuals should never feel pressurized. It's all about that learning environment. And to be honest, a big part for me is being part of something. Being part of something a little bit bigger than an individual. Yeah. And, things you can pick up. You may pick up one nugget every challenge, but I guarantee 6 months later down the road, it could be 12:30 in the night, and you think, wow, I can take that into this. So it's all these little bits of a jigsaw, which over X amount of years exposure gives you that ability to link in. So I think, the benefits of a challenge is massive. For people like Rob said, never feel influenced or never feel pressurized. It's all about helping each other. And we as a team, I know we're going to speak about how to contact us. If we can possibly do it, we will help any team, any organisation, whether it's FRS or thing, to develop, whether it's a team or even just a way of thinking in, developing their rescue techniques, or even how they can, take themselves forward in a different format. Because you've identified already that certain services are stuck in their ways, and that may be right, but They need to have ability, because the whole world is changing now, especially, vehicles are changing, people are changing, size of people are changing. So we need to be flexible and adapt to those changes.
Absolutely. It takes somebody being brave and stepping forward and doing it first, and people knowing that they're not going to get criticised, they're not going to lose their job just by trying a bit of innovation and utilising some of these methods that you guys are already doing. Love that, guys. Anything else before we wrap it up?
Only just to answer your question about how people can contact us. Starting back in the team, we was always very nervous about branching out to social media.
It's scary. I regularly think I'm going to lose my job because of the podcast, honestly.
Even down to the fact that you asked us to be on this podcast is really humbling for us. We never thought people would be interested in what we do. So out there, obviously, we've got our Instagram and our Facebook, and that's really opened up the opportunity for us to. We share a lot of information, but we also receive a lot of information. We're currently, organising some webinars where we're going to do some online footage, and we link directly into the team from Mexico. We've got contacts in France, and social media for us has given us that sort of vein system. We can be able to be in contact with all these different people and share that learning, whether it's us promoting it out or them sharing it to us. We get a lot of people asking questions, and it's a really good opportunity to have that exposure. Obviously, within that, then we're in a position where, by the following that we've now generated, is when we're going to UKRO, World Rescue Organisation, and we're actually doing these educational workshops where it might be HGV, might be new vehicle technology. We try to promote that on our social media so that we're sharing our learning to everybody else who's not there. And for me, that's the thing about us as a team. There's no point having all the learning in your own head. It's getting out there. So anybody out there who wants to contact us, by all means, feel like you can do through social media. We will definitely endeavour to get back to people if there is a slight delay, but also we will be putting out some things going forward where we're hopefully going to be doing some more educational training.
And if we haven't got the answers, UKRO has got a fantastic learning platform. We'll signpost them at WRO and all. We are a team. We like doing things ourselves, but we also want to dovetail all our actions into UCO and WRO. So, I think that's something what the team wants to promote to, that heavy involvement with those organisations,
I've found, I totally agree, there's so many bad aspects of social media. A lot of the time you just hear that it's turning people against each other and it's poisonous and all this sort of stuff. But I personally have found with the podcast, my professional development has just accelerated because you get that opportunity, like you say, to speak to people from emergency services all over the world, different techniques, different technologies. And I think that's a great way for us to leverage this for the good. And we'll stick all the links to you guys' pages. For those webinars, when they get sort of put together, it'd be great to get them and share that information with people, just to get this information out there, because you guys are out there innovating, world champs, world leaders in a sector that RTCs and rescues is changing every single day, and it will continue to do so for years to come.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I really appreciate you coming on, fellas. I know your time is limited, so thanks for doing that, and look after each other.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. Take it easy, boys. Hey folks, just jumping back in to say thanks again for jumping onto the Firefighters Podcast today. If you are an admirer of the emergency services, if you yourself are a firefighter, be sure to jump over to our YouTube, Instagram channels, check out some of your favorite episodes, some of your favorite sound bites, and learn a little bit more about all of the guests. Jump over to the website, and there's so many little rabbit holes to go down for your own personal development as well. So once again, it's a big thanks to the Bridgend Extrication Team. I would love to have them on again once everything is back up and running, once the competitions are live and kicking, and our champions are once again in the competition. Be sure to stay up to date with all of our latest guests by jumping over to the email link, check the notes in the podcast brief, and make sure as well for yourself, if you want to be into the chance to win yourself a pair of Hikes boots along with our partner Hikes, we are giving away a brand new pair. Absolutely no tricks to this one at all, no funny business, no small print, 100% no paying for your postage or anything like that. You can get yourself a hand on elite footwear from Hikes, from the Firefighters Podcast. Jump over, find the post, tag a friend, make sure you find your favorite episode, share it to your page, and that's all you need to do to be in for a chance to win every single month running right up to the end of this year. We've had 3 winners already, so for your chance to be in it, you've got to get over there, you've got to check it out. And all that's left to say is thank you so much for coming over and checking out the podcast once again. We are on such a hot streak right now. We've got some amazing guests coming up, we've got some more world record holders, we've got some more lifesavers, and some more heroes of our community. So until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry, and I will see you real soon right here on the Firefighters Podcast.